So I've gotten a number of comments below on YouTube requesting a review of my Tesla Model 3. And you know me, I tend to tell it how it is. So I think at the end of this vlog, I'm gonna do that. So those of you who don't care and are only here for the poker can simply check out and not have to watch that part. But for those of you who are interested, my thoughts after having a Tesla Model 3 now for 2 months, we'll have that at the end of this vlog. But first things first, we're at the Peppermill. There's a 3-5 game starting at 1 o'clock, so I'm gonna be in it. After a short wait, I get into the game and buy in for 1,000. I start off losing a couple of hands to an OMC, but then I pick up 2 red aces in the small blind after a couple of limps. I raise to 35 and get 2 calls. The flop comes out 9-7 deuce with 2 clubs. The low jack checks out of turn, and then it gets checked to me. So with $105 in the pot, I decide to bet 70. And then, after that out of turn check, the low jack raises to 320, leaving himself only 100 behind. In my experience, acting out of turn in this fashion is generally kind of a nervous tick and generally a sign of strength. I decided to interpret it as that and make the fold. He went on to tell me that he did have a pair of deuces for a set. That is, if he's telling the truth. Later, playing 7-handed, I pick up pocket kings and the hijack. I raise to 20. And then the small blind and the big blinds make the call. So it's 60 in the pot. We see a flop of queen 10-6 with 2 diamonds. It gets checked to me, and I bet 50. The small blind thinks for only a second and makes the call, which is followed by the big blind folding. So with 160 in the pot, the turn is an interesting card. It comes another queen. The small blind decides to then lead out. He bets 70. Which I figured was a good bet if he had a queen in his hand. But it's certainly not one that I can fold to, so I make the call. With 300 in the pot, the river is another queen. And he now leads for 100. There are actually some players out there that I would definitely raise here against with queens full of kings, but this guy is a total unknown, so I decided to play it safe and just call. And I wish I hadn't done that, as he shows ace 10. For queens full of 10s, not as good as my queens full of kings, so I take it down. Next hand, I make it 20 on the button with jack 10 of hearts, and I get called by a guy who you probably know of, Yukon Brad Booth in the small blind.
Brad Booth just said he's all in, which means he's putting Phil Ivey all in.
I love Yukon.
Booth is not just a tough player, but one of the nicest that I know, and a big hockey fan like me, but that's neither here nor there. Here we see a flop of 10-8 deuce with 2 hearts. Top pair and a flush draw for me, though I don't always run that good on these spots. Just see vlog number 4. Booth checks, I bet 25. He makes the call, and the turn comes an offsuit king. He checks, and I bet 50. Definitely a spot where I could have considered checking it back, but I still figure he's calling me extremely wide and wanted to get more money in. I somewhat regretted that decision, though, when he ended up picking up a black chip and 3 greens and raising me to $175. He's definitely capable of doing this, very light, as I've seen on a number of occasions, so I opt to make the call and hope to improve on the river, which I don't do. It comes an offsuit 7. I'm then planning on folding to the majority of the bets he's going to make here. Instead, he bets incredibly small. He bets 90. I was definitely torn, but I decided to call, considering he could definitely be under bluffing the river to get me off a better misdraw. Unfortunately, that was not the case here, as he shows a set of 8s and takes it down. Shortly after that, I end up losing a hand to him where I had 2 overcards and a flush draw. I brick everything out, and he was raising light. His pair of 5s was good enough, kind of speaking to my previous point, but it doesn't help me in either spot. Later, still playing 7-handed, the button opens to 15 and a small blind calls. I then look down at pocket kings and raise to 45 in the big blind. button calls, so does the small blind. With 135 in the pot, the flop comes out king 10-7 with 2 diamonds, giving me top set. The small blind checks, and I consider checking back because I block top pair, and both opponents are less likely to have suited hands given the fact that it's a 3-bet pot, but I settle on making a small bet of $45. The button folds, and so does the small blind, making me wish that I had slow played. Next hand, I pick up ace king of diamonds under the gun +1 and make it 20. The button calls, and we see a flop heads up of 7-8-9 with 2 diamonds. I bet 40, and the button makes the call. The turn is an offsuit 5. I fire a second barrel of $125. That one gets the job done as he makes the fold, but I'm still stuck 800 on the day. After that, I pick up pocket kings again, this time under the gun 2. I make it 15, hoping to induce a 3-bet, which doesn't come. The low jack calls. Brad Booth in the hijack makes the call, as does the small blind. So it's 60 in the pot. The flop comes out 5-5-6 with 2 spades. I bet 30. The low jack folds, and Booth raises me to 80. Definitely not going to be folding here, so I make the call. The small blind folds, and with 220 in the pot, the turn is the deuce of spades. I check. Booth checks back. The river comes another deuce, so at this point, value betting seems in order. I put in 2 green chips. He hardly thinks for it any time at all and makes the fold. Last hand, and what a surprise, I pick up pocket kings, this time under the gun. I make it 20, +1 calls, and the hijack calls. The blinds fold, and with 60 in the pot, the flop comes out 8-7 deuce rainbow. I bet 50, and +1 calls, leaving himself 175 left, with already 160 in the pot. The turn pairs the 7, and I just had a really good feeling that if I checked, he would jam all in with his entire range here. I was right about part of that. I did check, and he did jam all in. I snap called, but there's one slight problem. He showed ace-7 offsuit for trip 7s. River came at 10, and I lost a $510 pot. I was going to play a bit longer, but my wife had family in town, and I was invited to dinner at their place, so I decided to rack up, booking an $860 loss. The rough month of May continues. All right, I was not planning on doing any vlogging here actually, but what ended up happening was the day that I vlogged, and I've been trying to do this where I vlog a whole day's play and wrap it up essentially. That was on Wednesday after I worked about 4 hours over at Colo. Didn't have to stay and do a live shot. I actually straight packed something for the 5 o'clock show and got out of there, so I went to the poker room and then did that vlog. What ended up happening was played a session yesterday, Thursday, ended up losing a brutal cooler to a local pro. But then today, which I'm recording this on Friday night, a first in vlog history, I think. So what ended up happening was we ended up getting a $15 raise from +2 and a call from the low jack, and I call in the cutoff with 10-8 of clubs. Blinds fold, and the flop comes out Queen Jack 9, all clubs. I would call that above average. So we flop a straight flush. The original raiser promptly just fires 3 green chips into the pot. I think I may have captured some of this on my phone. I wasn't planning on doing any recording, so I actually grabbed the phone. I tried to surreptitiously grab some with the phone vertical. That's how it started anyway. So he fires 3 green chips into the pot and immediately gets snap called by the low jack. And I just kind of fell into the mode of I think I should slow play this to try to keep both guys in there. I don't know if that's the right play or not, but at the time it kind of felt like it was, so I decided to slow play as well. So I then was able to put my phone in position and grab some actual video of this hand. Unfortunately, my plan didn't work out perfectly because on the turn, which didn't really change anything, it came in offsuit 7, neither player bet. So it got checked to me, and I made a bet of 165. The original raiser folds immediately, so I don't know what he was doing. But then after a brief moment of thought, the low jack calls. River comes an offsuit king. So it now brings in a one-liner, but no other club comes. He checks, and I bet 300. He thinks about it for a minute, and I still think there's a chance he might just ship it all in here, but he doesn't. He folds and tells me that if that had come another 9, it would have been a bad beat jackpot, because I have to show for the bonus hand, getting $150 in bonus money for the straight flush, plus a couple hundred for a high hand, which I'm assuming will hold up. But yeah, so it ended up being a bad river card for me because he ended up having pocket 9s for a flop set. So definitely could have made more if I fast played it. Not sure how you guys might have played that one, but I still think it's a first in vlog history with a flopped straight flush. I think the first straight flush of any kind the last year and change I've been doing this vlog. So anyway, that'll wrap it up for this edition. As always, follow me on Instagram @BenDeach, and we'll see you next time.
Where is my